Hi folks, Slick Slices here. A couple of years back, a guy called Carl Pearson he wanted to design his own knife, have it made and see if he could sell it. And what he was doing was attacking a particular market, which is the UK legal pocket knife. And he wanted to have something that had the sort of quality of a a sort of leading manufacturer's pocket knife, like this Chris Reeve Sebenza. It's small enough that you could carry it in the UK, but we have this ridiculous law against having knives that lock open. It's a thing, it exists, so we can't really carry knives like that. So what he tried to do was to make a knife that was of similar quality, that but was UK legal and was affordable. And I think that's an important criteria, because the Chris Reeve Sebenza, even in plain Jane form, is pushing £400 now. These came out at about 110 when they first came out, and one could argue it's in better materials. But anyway, this was his first attempt, and it wasn't perfect. He realised that himself, and he's done some major upgrades, both in the life of this knife and in one I'm going to show you today. But this one is a little titanium flipper. I'm terrible at flipping knives, I really am. And he produces under the brand of Who Knives, although it does have CD Pearson on the spine. Now, in a little quirk of fate, I just got a new job, and I now work about 100 metres from where Carl lives, which is nice. At some point we'll keep threatening to meet up for a coffee, but it never quite happens, but we'll get there. I've only just started the job. Anyway, this had a few shortcomings. They weren't serious, but they were serious enough. The biggest one was the fact that the clip was originally titanium, and it wobbled about and put scratches on the knife. So he got this new clip made, and he sent that one to me, and I put it on there. And after that, I was kind of quite content with this knife, really. M390 blade, titanium handles, double detent flipper. But along came the V2 version. Now, this is where Carl took the feedback from the first one and made some changes. And the changes are quite subtle, really, but actually quite significant. First thing is, it came with the stainless steel clip, which I've often said, I've said it of my Rocksteads, a plain stainless steel clip beats the titanium anything all out of the water, because it just works. And if you're gonna have a clip on a knife, it's really got to work. It's got to clip into your trousers, hold the knife in your trousers, but easy to retrieve when you want it. So I was glad that he did that, but this came standard with that. He also changed the finish, because this, although it's a very nice sort of bead blasted finish, very reminiscent of the new Chris Reeve finish, which is mine with the old finish, it was quite susceptible to snail trails and damage. So this one immediately came out with a stonewash finish and a stonewash finish blade. Then he went around all the edges. He got the chamfering fairy to go around and just tidy up all the edges, and it's a subtle change, but actually it's quite a significant one, really, because it makes quite a difference to the way that you interface with a knife. It has a better feel to it. He also changed it internally, in that the detents in this knife are on this side of the blade, and in this knife they're on this side of the blade. And that means that when you're folding the knife, in this one you're pulling the blade out from the detent arms, are holding it, pinching it like my finger and thumb there at the back, and they're holding the back of the blade, and you're pulling it out of that. And in this one, they're at this side of the blade, and you're pushing them open down the way. And that produces, for the same strength of spring, a much stronger detent. And that, I think, is good, because it actually is slightly lighter on the opening, but it's really quite tough on the closing. And that's really what you want, because you don't want this knife to just... There was a Kaiser, I think it was called the Kaiser Pinch. You opened it, and there was literally nothing holding it open. And it's the first knife I've ever had in my life where I genuinely thought it was just a bit scary. It's like an open L without a lock. There's nothing to stop it coming back on your hand at all. Even a Higa Nakami's got a little chikiri on the back that you can hold your thumb on. But there was nothing on that Kaiser. This has got a decent detent, which was... is it as strong as a proper traditional slip joint? Maybe not, but you do get, and this is an important thing, you do get that flipper opening with this that you just can't get with a traditional slip joint. But there is a potential problem with these, and you can call me paranoid, and I hope that you are right, that I am paranoid. But it's very clear from the last white paper that came with the last amendment to the Offensive Weapons Act that they are trying very hard to find a way to ban flipper knives. And they haven't done it. They're perfectly legal at the moment. But there's an attempt to try and bring these under the prohibition that applies to automatic knives, or what they would call flick knives. They tried to find a definition which was to do with pushing a lever or switch on the blade to activate the knife, or some sort of wording like that. Now, if they ever manage to get that wording satisfactory from their point of view, then I think there's a good change of that. These knives will go from being specifically UK legal to being banned. Now, I hope we're away from that, and I hope it never happens, but you need to be prepared for it, and that's where this new knife comes in. These were called the V1, this is the V2. Now, these come in these nice boxes. They're undoubtedly nice. I was very critical of Jack Wolf's thing the other day. Yes, they're very nice, if that's what you fancy. Personally, this is going to go in a box, just like the Jack Wolf one has, and go in a cupboard. And the reason for that is because if you ever want to sell this knife, because they originally came with all this gubbins, you have to still have all this gubbins, and that makes some of the gubbins in there rather useless. You know, the Jack Wolf one, if you're holding it as part of a collection, you've got to keep stuff. You can't use that slip because it'll end up getting all stretched and bashed. You can't use the cloth because it'll end up getting all marked and dirty. You can play tiddlywinks with the POG if you play tiddlywinks. I don't. And the tins, yeah. And this is the same. This is the same here. I have 3 of these boxes here now. Now, this one arrived from Carl. It is sent as a review sample. That is to say, it's his, and I either have to return it or I buy it. Now, the second one, I bought the first one just off his website. The second one was sent as a review sample, and I chose to buy it. If I keep this one, I'll be buying it. One of the reasons why I kept the first one was that the one I bought came with number 189 on the blade. They're all limited edition. When the second one arrived, it was 189 as well, and I took that as a bit of an omen. I thought I have to have the pair because they match. I wanted 189 for this one. 189 had gone, but 188 was available, 190 was available. I got 190. So anyway, this is not a gift. I will either return it or pay for it. But let's be clear about that. Now, open this up. The knife's in the little baggie. We have a nice Who cloth, and I've just told you what I think about those. Then we've got a Who sticker. The first one came with 4 stickers, the second one came with 2, and this one came with 1. You did also get this little sticker though, which I quite like actually. Quite a nice, cute little sticker. But it's still only 2 stickers, not 4. Then we have the specification card, V2. And this tells us that, put it there so you can see it, but basically M390, 2.75 inch cutting edge, 6.67 inches overall, close length 3.94 inches, weight 96.9 grams, double D tent, grade 5 titanium handle, deep clip, pocket clip, deep carry, left tip up, right and left. I can't even read. This is too late at night to be doing this. Pocket clip material, stainless steel, which I approve of wholeheartedly. Liners, grade 5 titanium as well. And this is the first run of the V2 designer Carl D. Pearson. We have the lifetime warranty. Lifetime warranty is fantastic. You can read that if you want. My only concern with these is that lifetime warranty from Carl D. Pearson, though I know him to be a man of honour, is only as good as he is. If anything happens to him or the company goes bust or whatever, this ceases to be of much value. That's only a warning, and there's I have no reason to say that's what will happen. But there you are. And thank you for your custom. Now this little card has a picture in the top right hand corner there of one of these knives taken apart, so you can see what the insides look like. And Who Designs Limited, and there's the social media stuff. Again, you can pause it. Contact info at the bottom. And Who Knives? Why Who Knives? That helmet there was discovered in the Who hoard, which was a burial mound for presumably a sort of Anglo-Saxon king or lord or whatever. It must have been quite significant because there's an awful lot of gold stuff in there. It's all in the British Museum now, which you can go and see. I've been to see it. It's a great exhibit. And it was discovered as in a field. It was sort of a mound in a field, and somebody thought, I wonder what that is. They dug it up, and that's what was inside. There's a whole ship and all of his stuff. So, cut to the chase. See, this box will just go in a cupboard. And I've got cupboards full of boxes. I must have 300 boxes somewhere. I've probably even got boxes for knives I don't have anymore. Usually I try and find them when I pass a knife on. Anyway, Who Knives, little bag. Reminds me of the little Boca bags. I know Benchmade do them as well, but there's a black. Boca do white ones. And this is the little knife. Now, you may notice with these ones I've turned them around to left hand configuration, which is the same because one of the things that we're going to look at in a second, these screws are blind screws. So when this was the show side, the only screw was the pivot, and this one you've got two screws on both sides, good and bad. On the good side, on the bad side, you've now got the 4 screws showing. On the good side, it does mean these screws are replaceable. You can't strip the thread on the metal on the handle. You can only strip the threads on the screws, and then you can replace them. That tells us that, unlike the original ones, the back spacer is a separate piece and not integral to one of the scales, which it was on the was integral to the show scale on the original one. I haven't moved the clip over yet, and for that reason I haven't removed this plastic, but this plastic is quite important. This was an improvement that came on the second run of the V1. The original ones, the clip rubs on the knife, which causes a little bit of a scratch like that, and if you're going to turn them around, the plastic stops that from happening. So this one arrived with the plastic. There is no scratch on that side. I just turned it over, then I took the plastic off, and I'll be doing the same with this one, but that's why I've left it on for just now, because I didn't want to fiddle about with it before you'd all seen it. So again, it's the same titanium, it's the same stonewash finish. It has the same touch of the chamfer fairy, and much as this, as it's sort of rounded shape, looks much smaller than those, you'll actually find it's exactly the same size as the original ones. What's different though is there's a bit more shaping to the handle to give it some degree of style. Now there aren't any inlays or any fancy stuff, but that's because these are produced at a certain budget, and these are now coming in about £150. But for titanium M390 steel, that's a pretty good price. It's a very good price. It's a third the price of a Sebenza. Now, we could argue that there's reasons why the Sebenza costs more, but, well, you know, this is built to a budget, but it's built very well for the budget that you're given. Now, this is thumb stud opening, and I can open it with a thumb stud, but I don't really like it. I'll come back to that in a minute. What I do like, though, is the shape of this blade. Now, I saw that on YouTube, and I said to Carl, any chance you could send one of these along for me to review on the strength of that blade shape, because I wasn't going to bother, because, you know, it's just another M390 titanium blade, and as we know from other manufacturers, you know, by the time you get to the 9th one, God almighty, there's nothing new in this planet. Well, we've got a different shade of carbon fibre, or we've got a different blade style here, but everything else is exactly the same. But what struck me about this one was it reminded me of something. You might be surprised at what it was, or maybe I'm too predictable, you know exactly what it was, but it was this. Now, this is a Rockstead Heisen, and the Rockstead Heisen costs about 4 times as much as this one. So in some ways you can say there is no comparison, and you'd be right. But let's just look at the blade shape. You've got this flat, you've got the flat. Okay, the fuller is different, but this is a trademark, so you wouldn't really want to copy it, and your thumb stud opening. But you've got this long swedge at the back, you've got the high sabre, you've got this lovely line along here. It made me smile when I saw that. Now, one or two others of the Rocksteads, and I don't have lots of examples to show you, but this one has what's known as a shinogi line, which is this line along here. Many of them don't, even my Higo doesn't have it. Others come in sort of different sort of what we might call tanto shapes. Now, as far as real Japanese tantos go, no tantos are like that. No tantos have that, what's known as a Yokoti line, and the two different bladed. It's so rare. I mean, I'm sure you'll find an example if you look hard enough. But most tantos, this is the shape of a tanto blade in Japan. This is a very standard traditional shape. But others have, but some of the Rocksteads do have that kind of American tanto vibe about them, which really comes from a katana, from a sword, or a wakizashi, not from tanto. Tanto is a dagger, by the way. That's all it really means, is dagger or knife. But this one, this knife here from Carl has this what's known as a Yokoti line, and Yokoti, this is the shinogi line. This is the Yokoti line. So a shinogi line is parallel with the edge, and actually, to be honest, that line up there is probably the shinogi line, but let's not worry about semantics. But a blade that goes perpendicular to the cutting edge is called the Yokoti line, and it differentiates the tip from the blade. Now, what this does is it changes effectively the distal taper of the knife, so that from here to here on the knife, the blade is of uniform thickness, but from here to the tip, the blade gets thinner. So that gives you a sort of thinner, more nimble point area. But it's not just a point; it comes right back to here. It's thinned from here to here. So I really like that. The swedge on the top makes the whole thing a little bit more pointy, which is quite nice. But more importantly, I think it actually just adds to the style. From a practical point of view, the real change in this blade from the original ones is he's added a sharpening choil, and I think that's very significant, because I've never actually done a sharpening on these ones. I've only stropped them, but this one here has already got, sorry, not this one. I'll show you the right one. This one here has already got a slight hint of a smile from the factory. Now that's only going to get worse over time. Again, every traditional knife you ever owned probably suffers from the same problem, so it's not a big thing. But this is the modern solution, and it works. By doing that, you can sharpen right to this point. You never create a smile, and you never dig into the blunt line. It's just a great solution. This knife, obviously, particularly when it's open, it's got some shape and form to it. So what you've lost in the flipper tab, providing you with some sort of guard, you've gained in here by having this first finger divot to put your finger in and stop your hand sliding forward onto the blade. The thumb stud is as I've already mentioned, is probably the weakest point of the whole design. And first of all, the thumb studs are rather like a Chris Reeve, I should say, pointed. And if there's one criticism that is levelled against the Chris Reeve knives time and time again, is that they are pointed and therefore uncomfortable. These are pointed and therefore uncomfortable. They're also a slightly weird shape, and they're very thin. So personally, I don't really like them. My probable course of action in the long run will be to just take them off, because if you take them off, you are left with effectively well, not really a nail nick, but a nail hole, more in the style of J.E. Made, which are also knives I really like. I quite like that hole as opposed to nail nicks, because it's easier to keep clean than a nail nick. And like Faulkner put a nail nick on both sides to make their knives ambidextrous, and then so you've got two bits that gather dirt, which you could go the opposite route and put nothing on, or you can make a hole, which is just easier to clean. You can get a cotton bud in there and clean it out. So I'm probably going to be inclined to take the thumb studs off, but if you have them on, you've got three positions. They come in the middle position. To stop it just getting loose and sliding about, they've got little sort of, they're wider at the 3 points where you can put them, and part of the back of the stud fits into that, so it makes them quite solid. Initially they did come loose, and I would think if you've decided where you want them, a little bit of blue Loctite on there would probably be a good thing. They haven't come loose since I put them back on. I tightened them up using a pair of forceps and a rubber band. So I put the rubber band around there, and then I put the forceps on. I didn't want to use pliers because I was slightly worried I would dent the clip. And as I say, this was sent on for review, not for me to keep. So it's not my knife, and if it's not your knife, I don't think you should start making adaptations to it. Hence, I've not moved the clip or anything like that. Not sure what else I want to say, but I like it. I think it's taken. I was talking to Lee White the other day about the way that a Barlow knife is polished, and to get this kind of rounded barreled shape, you have to take all these pieces of a knife that you've expensive pieces that you've polished them, you've put them all together, you've knocked the knife up, you've put the wood on, but it's a square block, and then you have to take it to a grinder, and you have to grind that curve in to make it how much of a hard line do you leave along here? How much do you crown it? And a just difficult skill to learn. And the only way to learn it is to take an expensive thing and grind it. And if you overgrind it, you've ruined it. If you undergrind it, there's room to correct it. But if you overdo it, you've ruined it. So what happens is that people end up leaving them very flat. I think this design suffered from that sort of problem. It was as though Carl didn't want to offend anybody, so he made it very, very simple. And nobody could look at that and say, oh God, that's ugly. Why did he do that? But at the same time, I would defy anybody to say, wow, that is a design icon. It's now he said, right, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to start designing something and not just giving people a flat piece of titanium. And that could go for you or it could go against you. And this knife, the handle and the blade, have taken that philosophy and run with it. And that could have gone horribly wrong. I could be sitting here now telling you, God almighty, what has he done? But no, I'm actually saying I think this stud needs some refinement. It needs it. And having seen what he did with the V1, I expect that will happen. And now we come to the chase. I can do one of two things with this knife. I can, hang on to it for a week or two, try it a little bit, not be too rough with it, and then I can put it back in the box and hand it back to Carl. Or I can pay for it. And as things stand at the moment, my very definite inclination is to pay for it. Because I actually think he's done a really good job here. And I am looking forward to turning that clip around, putting it the other way around, possibly taking the thumb studs off. I'm leaving them where they are for now because I'm rather hedging my bets. I know if I take them off, I'll put them somewhere in. Maybe I'll put them in that box, but that box will go in a cupboard somewhere and it might as well be lost forever. So I'm leaving them on for now, but I probably will take them off and just use effectively the nail nick to open this knife, because I'm never in such a position that I need my knife. Listen, I'm not getting in a knife fight. I'm in a wheelchair with a paralysed arm, a paralysed leg, and partly paralysed appendages that are left. So it kind of, yes, a true one-handed opening is a good thing for me. It does make my life easier, but I suspect that the days of flippers are going. I can't do any other flicking methods, and one-hand opening is always still a roll open, and none of the knives I take out are ever one-hand opening. I can't one-hand open a slip joint with a spring. I just don't have the strength in my fingers. So I'm quite happy with this the way it is. So my inclination is to keep it. I think Carl has made a bold attempt at this. And I think, when we get to the V10 or the V12 or whatever they're going to be eventually, we're going to look at these and think that these are classic designs. And at a budget. I think £150 is getting towards the limit of what I'd pay for this, to be fair. I don't think if they creep up towards 200, you'll have to offer something quite significant for that. And a fancy box is not what I'm talking about. I would rather see the money go into the design. And if this came in a plastic bag or a cardboard box, I would be quite happy. Shiragorov's come in a cardboard box. And not a big fancy one that's barely bigger than the knife. And that's the way I think it should be. The wooden boxes that Rocksteads come in, and those ridiculous boxes that Rough Rider use, just don't do anything for me. They actually get me irritated, as happened with Jack Wolf ones. I just thought £300 for a knife that frankly, I think it should be nearer 200. I see why it costs so much. Traveling all around the world and putting it in fancy packaging and so forth, that's got to bump the cost up. It probably is. I don't think he's making a huge, taking a huge chunk out of them, but at the same time, I'm buying a knife that I think is probably worth 200, and I'm paying 300 for it, and that just that starts to irritate me. Now, if Carl was to start creeping towards the 200 mark, I think he would be pushing it. 150 is, I think, probably about as far as I would go. You know, my little West only cost 100. I don't know how much that cost. I bought it second hand, but it cost me under 100. Kaiser Zip Slip is probably the comparator that I might use for this knife, and I think this comes in about 110 or 120. Now, this is M390 and this is S35VN. I've nothing wrong with S35VN, and I do think I quite like this handle, but again, that could be that you could love that, you could hate it. This and this are about the same sort of price. Do I prefer this to this? If I could only have one, I think I'd probably have the Kaiser, to be honest. But these are made in much greater volumes, of course. And I'm slightly worried about the spring system in this. There's really quite a small spring that holds the blade open. It's not that big spring. That's just a backspacer. The spring is inside it. I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense to me. I do quite like the fact that both these knives also, well, the V1 knives had Carl Pearson on the back, CD Pearson, and this one has Michael Vagnino, who's a designer. I think it's sad that this one has lost that. But there we are. Right, there we are. So you got the bottom line. I think I'm going to tell Carl I'm going to pay him. Thank you very much. Any comments, please put them below. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some other things, there's another Tailor's Eyewitness coming up. A new one, a new shape that you won't have seen before. I might have, certainly not on my channel, and I couldn't find one on YouTube. So, if you want to see those, please subscribe and remember to ring the bell. Thank you very much. Bye.